So Governor Cuomo had his state of state a couple of days ago, and we were all under the impression because for a couple of weeks now, well, not a couple of weeks, after January 1st, it turns out that a lot of stories on how the governor and others in the party having some regrets now about some of this bail reform, cash bail, criminal reform bill, which started January the 1st. So we all thought, very logically, he would address it at the State of the State. He did not do that. And one of the guys that was quoted in the New York Post a lot that morning is a man that ran against Cuomo for the gubernatorial here in New York back in November of 2018. And that's our good buddy Marc Molinaro, who we endorsed. We wanted him to win, and we hope at some point he does get back into politics. With that said, here he is. Good friend of the Bernie and Sid Show, our good friend Marc Molinaro. Good morning, Marc.
Hello, Marc.
Good morning, guys. How are you?
Good. Reached out to you. I want you to talk about Governor Cuomo, and all you wanted to talk about was Joe Judge, the new coach of the Giants. Yeah. So quickly,
I just want a winning season. I want a winning season.
No, I know. Listen, it was funny. You would come on with Bernie and I and talk about running against Governor Cuomo, what you would do to help fix New York, but you always found a way to include your grandfather, a big Giant fan. You're a big Giant fan. So 30 seconds to move on here. Are you happy with the hire?
I'm willing to give him a shot. I was not terribly impressed when I saw who they picked. But hey, listen, if he's got energy, he's got desire, and he can get this team organized, let's hope for a decent season.
All rise for the judge, says the future governor, maybe Congressman Marc Molinaro. But
I'll be back. Don't you worry, I'll be back.
I hope so. We need you big time. We need you.
Plus, you make a great pizza. I saw what you did in Howard Beach. That was amazing.
See, other politicians, they put the dough in their pockets. I throw it.
That's exactly what we need on the campaign trail, is witty, funny stuff like that.
Yeah, sure.
That's good stuff, Marc Molinaro. Hey, listen, but what's not so good is this new criminal justice reform law, no cash bail. Not only no cash bail, but these discovery rules that they're going to lead to a lot of charges dropped because they're nearly impossible to comply with. And this idiot governor signs it into law. Governor Cuomo signs the bill into law, says, yeah, this is good. And now what? Now the criminals are walking the streets. They're cavalierly. They're out of the they punch a cop. They beat up a cop. They're out of the precinct before the cop's off his shift. What's going on?
No, what they did was rush through. I mean, they checked the box off of their progressive hit list here, and they rushed through legislation that ultimately is threatening public safety. By the way, it risks witnesses. Discovery makes it that much more chilling for witnesses to come forward. They risk the safety of victims. And even if you believe in bail reform, and there ought to be some consideration for the fact that we do have two systems of justice. If you're rich, you're considered one way. If you're poor, you're considered another. But what they're also doing is taking the offender who may have mental illness or drug addiction and just throwing him out into the streets. And so all of this is creating a real public safety problem. And can you imagine? The governor spoke for 2 hours. 2 hours. Yeah. You would think just once he could acknowledge in front of his progressive friends that maybe this was a step too far. And if New Yorkers don't rise up and really speak out, they're going to keep doing it. I mean, this is a prime example of what happens when one party rules an entire government and isn't concerned about listening to people with whom they disagree.
See, what shocked me was if Governor Cuomo never said a word about it, it started January 1st and the criminals were running into the streets, I would understand why he never brought it up. But literally, Marc Molinaro, the day before he spoke at the State of State, the day before, there was a New York Post column where Governor Cuomo is quoted as saying they may need to make some changes. So if he's going to say that the day before, I'm just curious, talk to me like I'm a kid here. If he's going to say that the day before, what does he have to lose by bringing it up for 30 seconds at the State of State?
I don't think he wanted to run the risk of getting booed by progressives in that audience, and that's a shame. That's criminal, because it's important to tell our friends when they're wrong, and on this case, they're wrong. Listen, my county has done extensive amount of work to help people with mental health. We believe in public defense. There's a way to get this right. I mean, how often does somebody from New York say, look, New Jersey did it right?
True, they do.
They did.
The judge has discretion in New Jersey, you're right.
they get to consider risk to the individual, risk to the community, and on discovery. Listen, you can't have a situation where the alleged offender gets doesn't even get out of jail, but maybe has an appearance ticket, and that night within 15 days can go off to the crime scene and start taking pictures. I mean, there needs to be some amount of common sense. I mean, think what happens to a domestic violence victim. Do you think that woman is going to want to step forward, or that man wants to step forward if they know the offender's going to be right back out on the street that night?
No, it's really chilling.
How many people do you know that have had a little bit too much to drink, or maybe they got into a fight, and just spending the night in a holding cell de-escalates the whole situation. There's no more crime committed by that person that day, and everybody feels safe for a period of time. None of that happens because they were too interested in appearing right than actually getting it right.
You're absolutely right about. Speaking of women being, say, sexually assaulted, there's a scourge we have going on here in New York City on the subways with women being sexually assaulted by these perverts who are by nature recidivists. And the governor's solution for that is to ban them from the subway for 3 years and essentially take away their Metro cards, as opposed to, say, locking them up for 5 years each time and then chemically castrating them.
Well, the chemical castration, I'll leave to you. If I'm governor, that will be your job.
I'll do it. And it won't be chemical either.
I guessed it. No, but the truth is, it's a lame. Should anybody be feel unsafe on the subway? No, and I rode the subways a lot during 2018. I do get it, and believe me, there are people who certainly rightfully feel afraid for themselves, their kids, their families. But at the end of the day, we ought to be enforcing the law. When Governor Pataki was in office, we talked about incarcerating individuals with significant incidents of sexual assault. I think if that's your business, you ought to be off the streets.
Where's the feminists? Where's Gillibrand? I mean, come on, they're women. Our women are getting sexually assaulted, and they want to take away their Metro cards.
Well, Gillibrand is too busy blaming Donald Trump for Iran. I saw her on TV last night. But maybe today, Byrne, who knows? Maybe. Listen, when it comes, it's very simple, Mark. And, we endorse you, obviously. We thought you ran a terrific campaign. You actually pressured the governor into debating because he was not going to do that. And we say this all the time, whether it's our good buddy Eric Ulrich, who we hung out with that day on Election Day, you and I, Mark, or a guy like Joe Borelli. We want to know how we get more Republicans to win here in New York. Because until we do that, the Cuomos, the de Blasios, a guy that I really can't stand, by the way, is Corey Johnson. I said that since day one, the city council leader. How do we get more folks like you to win here? I'm starting to think, to be completely honest, Mark, it just can't happen. It just can't.
No, I can't. Listen, I think when folks pay attention to the fact that one party makes decisions that isn't in their best interest, they'll start to pay attention. But we need your help too. So actually, I'm going to tell you, folks who want to help push back on this repeal, this bail reform. I don't call it reform; it's more like catch and release. I encourage you to go to my Facebook page, Marc Molinaro NY, Marc Molinaro NY on Facebook, or go to marcmolinaro.com. We've got a petition. We want folks to sign it, and believe me, Joe Borelli and others were all out there fighting. We just, frankly, need to raise the money, and we need to raise profile, but we also have to have a message that people understand. It can't just be, we're against that. It has to be, this is what we're for. And what they're doing is stripping away personal responsibility. If you commit a crime, you ought to be held responsible for it. It's not only society's problem, it's yours if you're the criminal. And so we've got to figure out a way to find that balance again. Otherwise, I'm telling you, we're going back to the 1980s.
You're right about that, no doubt. But former Senator Alphonse D'Amato, Marc Molinaro, he wrote that a political tsunami may be coming when people realize that we're in a public safety crisis, when more people become victimized. And the obstacle to changing this law is a guy named Carl Heastie. He's the state Senate speaker, and he's from the Bronx. But you don't want to make him the face of this criminal justice reform law. You want to make somebody who's recognizable, like Governor Cuomo, who should know better. Make him the face. If the Republicans play it smart, they could actually use this to their advantage and make him the face and get Republicans elected to office.
The governor has the ability to set the tone. I said this when I ran. The governor can temper all of this. If you look to Democratic states, blue states that have Republican governors, the legislature moves fast. Yes, the legislature is progressive. But the governor, because he or she has to manage things, and that's the person you want to govern things, slows it down and tries to get it right. And instead, these guys are just rushing off a cliff. So Al D'Amato is right in that regard, but we all have to work to make sure that our friends, Democrat, Independent, Republican, understand that this is not good policy and it's not good politics, and it threatens our safety.
Yes.
And government ought to think about it. The governor stood up and said the principal responsibility governments provide for public safety. He said it as a response to anti-Semitism. Absolutely, we agree.
Yeah, he's doing a great job there too.
Rightfully so, and important. But listen, you can't be about public safety if you don't recognize the failures of the discovery and bail reform, and then be unwilling to say to your friends, progressive friends, guys, we got to get this right. And he wasn't willing to go there, and that's criminal.
All right, so one more time, Mark, give the folks that Facebook address so they can hop on here and try to make a difference.
Marc Molinaro NY or marcmolinaro.com. Sign the petition. We're going to continue to mobilize folks and continue to talk about how we make the state and the city of New York as safe as possible.
All right, there he is. He's very handsome,
right.
Very bright. You just heard him. He's a Republican.
Very handsome.
You are I got to give you that, Mark. You're a very handsome guy. You made me look bad that day. I didn't like that. My Noah Booth suit. You made me look bad. And you're a Giant fan, so you're our guy.
And hopefully he's the future.
Well, hopefully you are the future, yeah. So when, in fact, you make that decision, if you haven't already, please reach out to Bernie and I so we can help you win next time. We owe you one, okay, pal?
Thanks a lot, guys. Thank you.
All right. The great Marc Molinaro right here on the Bernie and Sid Show.